Good morning. May we ask everyone to please find their seats. The program will begin in a few minutes. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Asia Pacific Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction 2024. Once again, we are privileged to have with us a distinguished lineup of speakers and panelists for today's plenary. Today, we delve into a critical theme: localization and urban and rural resilience. This session highlights the need to strengthen local institutions through financing and connecting them with national and regional governance structures and non-government institutions such as businesses and civil society organizations to increase the resilience of infrastructures and communities, reduce disaster risk and subsequent ecosystem degradation, and strengthen capacities at local levels. Now, you may notice some empty chairs on stage. They are for the panel session after the plenary remarks. Let us get started by watching a short video that shows an overview of our plenary topic today.
Disaster resilience starts where we live: cities, villages, and rural landscapes. Communities know their land, risks, and needs best. Traditional methods of water management or crop rotation can bolster drought resilience. In cities, local flood assessments empower communities to identify and reduce risks. This is localization, putting those who know their environments in charge. But it needs support, financing, capacity building, shared knowledge. Innovative financing like community funds and public-private partnerships can transform resilience. Resources and technology empower communities to prevent risks, prepare, respond fast, and build back better. Risk data must be localized, connecting communities and all levels of governments. Scientific insights must be paired with lived experiences to truly inform action. Women, youth, indigenous and marginalized groups fill in the full risk picture. Without their empowerment, resilience remains incomplete. Localization isn't just risk reduction, it's ownership, leadership, and accountability. Asia-Pacific communities are integrating local knowledge into disaster planning and investment. Early warnings improve, livelihoods are protected, recovery is faster and sustainable. Local communities hold the key to reducing disaster risk. Together we can build a future where communities, villages, towns, and cities stand strong.
To start off this session, I am delighted to introduce our first speaker to deliver his plenary remarks. Honorable Renato Solidum Jr., Secretary of the Department of Science and Technology and the Vice Chairperson of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, Disaster Prevention and Mitigation Pillar, Philippines.
Warmest greetings to all distinguished speakers, panelists, participants, and organizers of the main events and sessions. At the 2023 Conference of Parties in Dubai, I made a statement that information is a basic need. Throughout our normal day-to-day processes, in personal or private or public spheres, we are in constant need of information to make reasonable decisions. Did we make a reasonable decision on time? Did we make a reasonable decision appropriate to the situation? The answer depends if we have the information on hand. I will now make another provocative statement that information as a basic need is an element central to localization. Localization, placing grassroots communities at the center of decision-making, giving local citizens the means to make a reasonable decision, creating information sets relevant to local and unique contexts and situations. Recognizing this, the Philippines, through the Department of Science and Technology, has been implementing programs that bring down to the grassroots the capability to make data-driven decision-making for disaster and climate risk reduction. First, to localize early warning systems, such as those for individual active volcanoes for eruption prediction, the instrumental and community monitoring systems for landslides, and the establishment of community warning systems for flood and tsunami, in addition to nationally operated monitoring systems. The second is the GeoRisk Philippines initiative, which has achieved a level of success measured by active engagement for and utilization of services by local governments, national government agencies, banks, businesses, and individuals, to name a few. As we move deeper into the century, the department is now expanding the breadth and depth of GeoRisk Philippines program. Soon, it will embark on a visionary program that leverages cutting-edge geospatial artificial intelligence, machine learning, business intelligence, and predictive analytics. At the heart of the new program is a dedicated Geospatial Analytics Solution Hub, or GATES Hub, which will harness the vast ocean of data generated by our science institutions and research programs and other organizations, such as in nutrition, forestry, agriculture, natural hazards, climate, health, and much more, to produce the best possible informed, relatable, relevant, and actionable information down to the grassroots. Grassroots communities will be at the center of decision-making. We Filipinos are often seen as victims of disasters, but through science, technology, innovation, and collaboration, we can change this narrative. We are moving beyond mere survival. We aim to thrive. So may I suggest that if we define resilience, we should not look at it simply because we need to survive, but we need to economically thrive. Merge everything with entrepreneurship, health, education, and many others. We are transforming our narrative from being victims of disasters to emerging victors over disasters. This message is not just for the Philippines, but for the entire Pacific region and the world. Together, let us redefine resilience through science, technology, spirit of collaboration among us, and localization as we move together, because we are a powerful force for sustainable development. Thank you, and mabuhay.
Thank you, Secretary Solidum. Please join me in welcoming our second plenary remarks speaker, Honorable Juanito Victor Remulla Jr., Secretary, Department of the Interior and Local Government, and Vice Chairperson of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, Disaster Preparedness Pillar, Philippines.
To all our honorable and distinguished guests, it is my honor to speak before you today on localization and urban and rural resilience, and tackle how the Department of Interior and Local Government helps strengthen the country's disaster resilience by localizing disaster risk reduction efforts. According to the 2024 World Risk Index, the Philippines is the most at-risk country to disasters. Thus, national and local governments down to the barangay level must work hand in hand to increase community resilience against disasters. As Vice Chair for Disaster Preparedness of the Philippines, National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, the DILG recognizes that the mainstream disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation in local planning is critical in ensuring that risks and vulnerabilities at the community level are addressed. I, for one, personally recognize the essence of proper planning in addressing disaster risks. Back in January 2020, the local governments of Cavite and Batangas worked together in developing disaster preparedness measures and evacuation plans for more than 52,000 residents from Batangas who had to evacuate to Cavite after the eruption of Taal volcano. As governor of Cavite, one of my aspirations was a safer Cavite. a better Cavite for a better Philippines. Thus, we integrated disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation in our provincial development and physical framework plan. This plan highlights the importance of land use planning and proper zoning in reducing the emergency response. Local government units should also focus on strategic land use planning to help achieve climate and disaster resilience. Proper land use planning is crucial in determining how communities develop and reducing their vulnerability to hazards like floods, landslides, and storms. As the agency mandated to exercise general supervision over LGUs, we work closely with the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development in facilitating the compliance of cities and municipalities in formulating comprehensive land use plans enacted through zoning ordinances. Just recently, we issued a directive enjoining LGUs to ensure the preparation or updating and approval of their comprehensive land use plans enacted through zoning ordinances. As of September 2024, 651 or 39% of our cities and municipalities have updated CLUPs, while 837 or 51% are for updating. We are now helping the remaining 146 or 9% of LGUs to comply with this directive. The department has been working on improving LGU's capacity to develop and update their comprehensive development plans and local development investment programs. To ensure that they are evidence-based, risk-sensitive, and contain programs that are adaptive to mitigate natural and biological hazards that may impede local development. As of October 15, 2024, 1,284 or 79% of the cities and municipalities have CDPs that are still in effect. Of this number, 910 CDPs have been assessed, from which 291 have been found to be risk-informed, 431 are partially risk-informed, and 188 are not risk-informed. We still have a lot of ground to cover. We hope that this activity will trigger concrete actions that will strengthen local capacities and build resilient communities. We do not have the luxury of time because climate change is here. It is here now. Because of our geographical location, disasters are inevitable. But with the commitment of all of us here to undertake decisive actions and actively engage our communities, we will take a leap towards our common quest for a safer, more resilient Asia-Pacific region. Thank you, and good morning to all.
Thank you, Secretary Remulla. I am delighted to introduce our third speaker to deliver his plenary remarks, Mr. Hans T.C., Chairman of the Executive Committee of SM Prime Holdings, Incorporated.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, fellow advocates for resilience, good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak about an important pillar, localization on urban and rural resilience. The intersection of sustainable development and resilience is of great interest to me as a property developer in our country, Philippines. This pillar is most crucial in creating sustainable cities and communities, as resilience is the bedrock of sustainable development. Urban growth in the Philippines, according to World Bank, is at 2.4% this year over last year, or an average of 2% increase over the last 4 years. With the country's total population of almost 120 million, we can say that the Philippines is a highly urbanized society with a 48.29% share of its population living in urban cities. Cities that have attracted people from rural areas because of the hope for better opportunity. Managing resilience then in urban, rural, and transitional communities is of the utmost concern, not only to the government, but as well to the private sector. At SM, we recognize that our responsibility extends beyond our stores and malls. It is embedded in our core business strategy where we plan, build, and operate with resilience in our mind. Our comprehensive disaster preparedness and business continuity program are a testament to our commitment to ensuring the safety and well-being of our employees, customers, and the communities we share. As such, localization is about empowering local communities, cities, and municipalities to become architects of their own resilience. We see that evidence-informed leadership is paramount. If we harness the power of data, science, and technology, we can make informed decisions, prioritize investments, and implement targeted interventions that effectively reduce disaster risks. Case in point, SM Prime Holding, through its public-private partnership framework, exemplifies the transformative potential of collaboration. The Adapt a City project, spearheaded by the National Resilience Council, or the NRC, brings together the private sector, government agencies, and local communities to co-create and implement solutions tailored to the unique needs of each adapted city. This produces a social and an economic environment that is safe, economically viable, and sustainable. As co-chair of the Arise Philippine Network, I invite all private sector companies to join Arise Alliance under supervision of the UNDRR, currently present in 31 countries. The business sector has much to offer: resources, expertise, innovative products and services that ultimately translate social economic gains into meaningful, sustainable development. For us, resilience is a goal. It is a shared reality by all communities, most especially to those at risk. In closing, let us push forward the resilience of community in this time of rapid urbanization. Remember, disaster risk reduction will always make good business sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. C. And now we transition to the panel discussion. Our moderator for Plenary 3 is the founder and coordinator of the Global Network of Women Leaders in the Red Cross and Red Crescent Movement, and the president of the Swedish Committee for Afghanistan. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Margareta Wallström.
So good morning, friends, excellencies, and guests. And I thank the speakers for setting the stage for the next stage of our discussion. I just want to say one thing, which I think, take it with you. We are the third and last panel of this conference, which is actually a privilege, because what you say now will reflect for many people the outcome of this conference. So use this opportunity to deliver strong messages. You know, we are actually standing on the collective knowledge and learning of big disasters that have affected the entire world. That's the legacy of this region and the continued legacy. Remember the Kobe earthquake 30 years ago? The Indian Ocean tsunami 20 years ago? The Great Eastern Japan earthquake almost 15 years ago? the Thai flooding, same year. All these disasters had an enormous human impact, but it also affected the world economy. It really distracted the entire world. So when we move on now, there were many other disasters here, of course. Important, devastating, but not that nature of fiscal and economic disturbance that the ones that I mentioned led to. So now we are focusing on local communities and local governments. And I think we can agree that if local governments and communities are not resilient, equipped to deal with their disasters, there are no countries and there is no global resilience. So that is, I think, the starting point for our discussion. The second starting point is, of course, the Sendai Framework midterm review, which in very polite language, as it is in United Nations, actually criticizes our progress quite heavily. And it says we are not making enough progress on, I would say, equipping and reinforcing community capacity as really dealing with their own resilience building. And we've heard also from the speakers here, lots of things are being done, but that's where really we have to start. So first point that I look forward to hearing from the speakers. And then the importance of local knowledge, and not least traditional knowledge. Some of the colleagues of the indigenous communities I spoke to the other day, they say this is only about speeches. How is really the traditional knowledge brought into the enormous opportunities now of AI, machine learning, all the things we've seen here? That's really something that I think is important for us. We're also looking at the barriers to resilience. There are many opportunities, but how do we overcome barriers? How do we bypass them? How do we actually talk about them? And this is very often about the financial resources, but there are very few answers to the question from communities, how do we access the resources? I hope we will explore some of these ideas. And finally, we have, of course, the issue of inclusion, participation, which is so important. And yesterday we had an important session on that. But I think I also heard yesterday that don't take it for granted. This is a lot more complicated than we are just saying it. So give it more attention on how to ensure that it happens. So with that, we hope for many ideas and input and things that we can learn from when we invite our panelists to the stage here. And first of all, and I would like all the panelists to come up here and take their chairs, Congressman Albert Garcia, Philippines, of course, welcome. Dr. Raditya Jati, who is the Deputy Minister of National Disaster Management, Indonesia. Ms. Kazuko Gore, who is the Mayor of the city of Sendai, the home of the Sendai Framework, of course, welcome. And Mr. Saimili Tawake, who we also can call Sai, I know now. She is the Chief Executive of the Pacific Disability Forum. Welcome. Welcome, Sai. No, you can sit. Well. So please take your chairs. I will join you there, and I will pass the first question to Congressman Garcia. And I think you have prepared already good. You come well prepared with some great ideas and your experiences. So can you share with us this morning what have been most effective in ensuring that national policies translate into implementation and resilience building at local level, and that makes it measurable, please?
Hello. Thank you. Good morning to everyone. As a former local government official and now a legislator, and I saw that this was emphasized by our three keynote speakers this morning, it's very important that the national policy and the national government collaborates with the local government units. Everybody knows that there's a saying that goes that all politics is local. I don't know if that's a good example, but when it comes to disaster or disaster resilience, all disaster resilience programs, if it's going to be successful, should be localized. And this was emphasized by our keynote speakers. National government and local government should be on the same page. There should be policies that empower local government officials, because the people, there's a management principle which says the people closer to the job should know the job better. That's why if we empower local government officials, they would be able to make their localities even more resilient. And community engagement is very important so that the communities, the villages, the household, especially the individuals, are resilient in their own capacities. That is very important. And also emphasized by our keynote speakers are the engagement not only with government, who has limited resources and expertise, but also with the private sector, the academe, the scientists. And that's what we've tried to do in our little province of Bataan, where we engage ARISE and National Resilience Council. We were given the CIDRA package, or the Climate Disaster Risk Assessment Package, so that we can act accordingly with our land use plan, our zoning, and so on and so forth. So these things are very important, and in the end, it should be monitored. Simulations should be made, and incentives should be set in place to make sure that local resilience is successful in the local government unit level and in the community level. So thank you.
So thank you. Of course, I will have many follow-up questions, but in the interest of every other speaker, I will take this afterwards. So thank you very much for that. In a practical example, I think an illustration of what all the three keynote speakers actually talked about. So second speaker this morning is, of course, Dr. Aditya Jati from Indonesia. You have worked for a long time, I know, on localizing these issues of disaster risk management and risk reduction. So on the issue exactly of knowledge, how do you ensure that knowledge and practices are really a part of this and effectively used for decision making, as I think all the three speakers have emphasized with you?
Thank you very much, Ms. Margaret Aberstrom, and Excellencies, distinguished guests, friends. As mentioned also by the Congressman, I think we have the similar characteristic of geography. Indonesia and Philippines, we have an archipelagic state mentioned in the Article 41 in the Sendai Framework, that the challenge now we're facing in future crisis also how to put everything in the localization, which means that resilience is a very local issue. So we will start by remembering what have been mentioned by Ms. Mercader was from 20 years ago. In Aceh, there was only 30 minutes from the earthquake until the tsunami. It was impacted. More than 127,000 people have been casualty and missing. And it takes 4 years to rebuild back Aceh. And 7.1 billion US dollar needed for the financial to rebuild again. So I think this was a wake-up call for us, Indonesia especially, how to put everything in localized, organized, and planning very properly. So during that time, the National Disaster Management Authority was established after the tsunami, and then we have a program what we call the Village Resilience Program. Village Resilience Program is actually how to put the local people, the community at the front line to understand and to prepare not only the knowledge but also the literation. Literation means not only knowing the definition, but they know how and what to do to prepare themselves. We have some example also that time during Aceh tsunami is one of an island of Simelu. We call it Smong. It's a traditional knowledge. It's a song sing generation to generation, mentioning about when the sea is there's an earthquake and you can see the fish because the water is decreasing. You should run up to the hill, and this is sang by all generation to mentioning how localization is important to understand, and this have been put into the plan of our national plan, which means that prioritizing the local is very important, including the resilience village. We've been working with the Ministry of Village to prepare and to put the budget, especially on how we can really see that the village is already ready. During the GPDRR in 2022, our president mentioned to the global community on the opening that sustainable should be also resilient. So we call it sustainable resilience. First is about a preparedness culture, including not only responsive but anticipative. Also related on the innovation of science technology and also innovation of financial issues, including infrastructure for resilience and not putting in silo on climate change, disaster reduction, and all SDGs. So in this occasion on APMCDR, I much grateful that we can also now talking with the people on climate change and also the RR. Now we need another club, which is the SDGs. Putting in the local level, decentralization is also a must. Now is a chance that in 2025 and 2029 we have the medium-term plan that will be established for the next governments. So now this is the first time that Indonesia have the national long-term plan until 2045. This is beyond the global agenda, including Sendai, SDGs, and also climate change. And we have put the stakeholders that related also, including the private sector, to be involved in the DRR issues. We have what we call now establishing the pooling fund by the Ministry of Finance, how to assess the funding from the community to the national level. So BNPB is responsible to verify and validate. This is one of the things that now we innovate to accelerate how we can really reach the 2030 agenda of all agenda. So I think local wisdom, decentralization, localization is our keywords for our planning and implementation. Thank you, Margareta.
Thank you. So, our next question goes to Ms. Kazuko Hori, the mayor of city of Sendai. And you will share with us how Sendai's experience to engage the many community stakeholders in the city and other cities to strengthen the local DRR strategies and try to make it coherent with national and international frameworks. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Rostrom. I'm pleasure for this opportunity. The city of Sendai suffered extensive damage in 2011 with the warm support from people around the world. We are able to carry out reconstruction efforts with the concept of build back better in mind. Currently, we are working toward building a disaster resilient city. We recognize the importance of a system of mutual aid among residents of local communities and as local level government with close ties to citizens. Efforts are being made to build the capacities of various stakeholders and promote cooperation. Allow me to introduce a few examples. Training is provided to residents who can act as leaders in their communities. Community leaders are responsible for supporting residents requiring assistance. They can be expected to promote disaster risk reduction awareness during normal times and exercise their leadership skills in times of disaster. Women leaders also play an important role in this initiative, using the lesson learned from the Great East Japan earthquake. We are working on training leaders through workshops and other programs. Furthermore, the Sendai Symposium for Disaster Risk Reduction and the Future is an annual event that brings together stakeholders who integrate DRR initiatives into their daily lives and share valuable DRR information with the public. In addition to promoting DRR awareness among citizens, this event also serves as a place for participants to network. Cooperation with academic institutes is also crucial. We work with International Research Institute of Disaster Science to Tohoku University to conduct a midterm review of the Sendai Framework for disaster risk reduction. We believe that it is essential to understand the current state of affairs and make effective investment in advance. We believe that cooperation with academic institutes is also crucial. These initiatives are also submitted to Sendai Framework Voluntary Commitment online platform as we continue to share our efforts with the international community. Local governments work to ensure the daily safety of their communities and play a central role in the fast response to disasters. In addition to building disaster-resilient infrastructure, local governments must take proactive steps to prepare every season for disasters, cultivate multiple stakeholders, and strengthen networks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I hear monitoring, long-term planning, and evaluations and follow-up from all of you. So our fourth speaker this morning is Ms. Takabe Sai from the Pacific Disability Forum. So, of course, what we would like to hear from you is about, I would say, constraints and successes in working across the entire Pacific area on issues of inclusion, policy making, and implementation. Please.
Thank you. Bula Vinaka, greetings. The Pacific Disability Forum is a regional organization of persons with disabilities in their organizations. And it has about 73 members, over 70 members across the Pacific. These are organizations. And 41 full members. These are organizations of persons with disabilities. So when I say organizations of persons with disabilities, these are organizations that are established by persons with disabilities and run by persons with disabilities. And this is one of the key strengths of the Pacific Disability Forum. We have partners, both international partners and regional partners that support the work of PDF. We have over 90% of the countries, the governments in the Pacific, that have ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And also, we have two big regional frameworks. One is the framework on the rights of persons with disabilities, and one is the Blue Pacific 2050 strategy. And disability is enshrined in the Blue Pacific 2050 strategy in Pillar 2, which is the people-centered development, and the Pacific Regional Framework on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Goal 4 talks about disaster risk reduction and as well as the work around climate change. As I've said, the strength that we have is we have partners, and we have these 2 frameworks, and we have our governments, more than 90% have ratified. And at the same time, the Pacific Disability Forum, working with their respective organizations of persons with disabilities, both in the South and in the North Pacific, to promote the rights of persons with disabilities, particularly in DRR situations, working with respective governments, working with their national NDMO officers, working with partners in supporting inclusive DRR work. For instance, in Samoa, the work around establishing the DRR, the Disability Inclusive DRR unit within the DRR spectrum or the NDMO spectrum in Samoa. That is the first for the Pacific, and that is by our Organization of Persons with Disabilities that leads the work in Samoa. And also, there are other works around in Fiji, in Solomon Islands, in Vanuatu, targeting inclusive policies, advocating for inclusive policies, inclusive programs, and more so, the advocacy around governments to hear the voices of persons with disabilities. Now, the Pacific has about 1.7 million persons with disabilities, and this is too big a number. And then we find that there is very little progress when it comes to the work on DRR and also in climate change. The Pacific Disability Forum conducted a study on climate change, and we found that climate change widens the exclusion gap, climate change exacerbates the disability condition, and there needs to be a lot more focus around the marginalized disability population. When I'm talking about the marginalized disability population or the underserved or underrepresented groups, these are persons with psychosocial disabilities, persons who are deaf-blind, the young people, the women, the children. These are underrepresented. But nevertheless, the work that has gone across in the Pacific through various partners like the Australian Pacific Climate Partnership, working in Solomon Islands, working in Vanuatu, working in Fiji, and other countries. The interesting thing is we build the capacity of persons with disabilities to be leading the work. And sometimes this is a challenge, working with partners, because when persons with disabilities come in and work with their partners, and partners looking at the person, not as the person who can do the job, but looking at the disability. And this prevents the work to be done in a very standardized way or in a very inclusive way. That is one of the challenges that we face. And also at the same time, working across governments, across sectors. This is one of the challenges that we face because sometimes even government departments, they don't talk to each other. So if they don't talk to each other, obviously, they will not talk to us. And our issues will be very otherwise swept under the carpet, or it will not be addressed in a very adequate way on the way that we would like them to see how persons with disabilities could be resilient and to live independently in the community. Because when governments don't talk to each other, it affects us. It affects the people in the margins or those who live in very vulnerable situations. And again, the work that the Pacific Disability Forum has done in Fiji and also in the paramedics insurance, where persons with disabilities through the paramedics insurance are able to get their cover if there is a cyclone or if there is flooding, a rainfall within the parameters of where they are. And if there's flooding, they'll get a certain amount of funding. But then again, there are issues with regards to transferal of funds. There are issues with regards to if there is no insurance, if there is no disaster, then what happens to the premium that's been paid. So these are some of the challenges that we have in the Pacific. But nevertheless, the work that we do hopes to amplify the voices of the 1.7 million that continue to face slow progress or otherwise suffer in silence when disaster strikes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And special thanks for putting forward the challenges and the constraints that face. Now, yesterday we also heard from, and I think even the day before, since you're doing so well on timing, thank you. We actually have a few extra minutes before we conclude, so I will ask you some questions you're not prepared for. It's okay. Yeah. And I heard yesterday from one of the private sector speakers reminded us again that governments are not always very good in sharing information, including with significant partners in the private sector that operate together with you. And now we also heard Sai's comments. Governments are special, we know that. But you make big commitments. So what do you think can be done about overcoming this, a bit the perspective that governments first do what governments do and then they collaborate with others? So do you have any immediate thoughts about that? Please. Then I come to you.
You're right, ma'am. Government sometimes have difficulty sharing data even with each others. In the Philippines, we have different levels of government. We have the national government, the regional government, and the local government units, which comprise of the provinces, cities, municipalities, and barangays or the villages. And sometimes we act in silos. And now with the consciousness emerging with the importance of data and data sharing, things are moving forward, but not as fast as we want to. But there are best practices being done. For example, through the leadership of our Secretary of Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Secretary Tony Loizaga Yulo, in our province of Bataan, we have the project Transform, where there is a sharing of resources between the DNR and their assets and resources and data in the local government unit of Bataan. And these resources are maximized for better use in terms of sustainability and resilience. So a lot needs to be done, but we're moving forward, and hopefully in the near future, sharing of data will be a day-to-day matter between governments and the private sector. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Please, Vice Minister.
Thank you, Margareta. So let me start by saying there's a policy in Indonesia, what we call the One Map, One Policy, and One Data is now responsible for BNPB, mostly at the risk data. The risk data actually is the downstream from the other upstream data, which is also responsible with other sectors. So working with this collaboration, we have been doing this since 2012, and then it is now open source for the data since 2016, what we call the inaris.bnpb.go.id. And this information is now being used also for the spatial planning, also environmental issues, and also for infrastructure, which means that from data, we will get information. From information, we will get analysis. From analysis, we will get strategy, and then from strategy, we will get policy. So this is how it works. So the policy have been made is not only just done by discussion, but also based on the data itself. So we've been discussing and collaborating with other line ministries, sectoral, and also open data is already done, and everybody can access the data itself. So everybody can understand the risks, what they're facing, and especially when they're investing in some area, they will know what actually the potential risk that they're facing at. So with this kind of data information, I think this bring up all together the silo that we've been discussing today. And also one of the ideas is to bring all together, and breaking the silo with sustainable resilience is one of the things that we have been raising since 2022 after the GPDRR. Thank you.
Thank you. So there is hope. Yes, there is good hope, sorry. So, Mayor Corey, would you like to comment also on many layers of information? No, you pass. So then I think what we'll do, we will move on to what is actually the final question to you. And since we actually have quite good time, I have suggested, as I started with, that this is the final panel. And the theme of this conference has been Surge to 2030. Now, of course, I have not been in every single session, but I have not heard much about that surge. I have heard a lot about what everyone is doing, and it's good, there's big progress, etc. But surge is something really, you know, the dynamics of the word in itself, and we got 5 years to go. And the midterm review was not very gracious with our progress, except on early warning. Actually, I think they noted really significant progress because we all work together. So I would like to invite you to talk about the surge that you would like to leave with your colleagues here in this forum. You can take the surge, which is your own area of work, but you can also, as an addition, since you have time, but brief, add a global surge that you really think to do. Because now all of you will start thinking about the post-Sendai. What do we need to do? You have a plan to 2045, so you've already done some thinking. So 2 things, your own surge in your work, and the global search that will help you. 1.5 minutes each. Who wants to start? Sai wants to start, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, for the global search, I just think it's best that we, with regards to the Sendai Framework, there needs to be some kind of harmonization with other frameworks like international or global frameworks like the SDG, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, other human rights conventions, because it seems like the Sendai is here and all these other conventions are here because we cannot progress with DRR unless we address all other factors, and that is very important. But for disability, six key areas, and we would request government to pay attention to persons with disability, to ensure that persons with disabilities have access, whether it's to evacuation centers, whether it's to hospitals, whether it's to schools, roads, infrastructure, transportation, information. Second, assistive technology. It's very important that assistive technology is provided to persons with disabilities. During disasters, we have seen that sometimes when persons with disabilities are evacuated, persons on wheelchairs, the person's evacuated, but the technology is left behind, leaving the person with disability to live in isolation in the evacuation center. The third one, social protection. Social protection is key. It's very important because there are disability costs that supports social protection, and governments to please pay attention in developing social protection policies and providing social protection to its population, particularly to persons with disabilities. 4, support services. 5, support services. Support services is very important. Without support services, persons with disabilities will not be able to live resiliently or live independently. What I'm talking about support services, example, the provision of DRR information into Braille, the provision of sign language interpreters, the provision of cited guides, the provision of information into very clear languages so that persons with psychosocial or intellectual or neurodiverse disability can understand. Localization or community-based inclusive development. This is very important, where the community are strengthened, resourced, provided with the information to enable them to live independently and also counter disaster when it comes. For persons with disabilities in the community, this is one of the key areas that is lacking. Trying to access essential services when preparing for or during response or recovery process. And last, non-discrimination. The provision of budget, inclusive budget, and also inclusive DRR policies to enable persons with disabilities to live as well as to be with like anybody else. The interesting thing is there's very little on inclusive budgeting when it comes to DRR. And lastly, and most importantly, when governments or other partners require disability information, please make use of organizations of persons with disabilities in your countries and also talk to persons with disabilities. Please do not take us for granted. We are 1.7 million in the Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sai. You speak so fast, so you deliver 8 points in 1.5 minutes. Excellent. So integration in the global frameworks, and your final point, I think, is equally critical. If you have questions about people living with disability, talk with people who live with disability and not through intermediaries. So, Congressman, your surge to 2030.
Aside from having close collaborations with our national government, we have very competent ministers or secretaries here. Secretary Solodum has done a good job in the DOST. Our newly minted Secretary of Interior and Local Government will surely do a good job and continue from his predecessor. So aside from close collaboration of the local government unit, which is the perspective I'm carrying with our national government, and the use of new technology such as AI so that we can even more capacitize local officials and local community. I'd like to include in our approach this new concept, especially for us, the inclusion of the blue economy and the green economy in the master plan of our local government units. This was put forth by our President, President Marcos Jr., during his State of the Nation address last July. And it's a very good concept where protecting and restoring your environment, the oceans and your forest, global markets will even incentivize localities that do this. So I think moving towards 2030, if we include this in our plan, we will be able to tap not just the private sector, not just the national government, but global markets in protecting local environments. And since local environment are a component of the nation or of the whole, then it will bring forth a more resilient and sustainable country and the world. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's what we call for short also biodiversity. Yes. Vice Minister, your surge beyond 2045 then.
Thank you. I would like to see one key action, excuse me, for the drive progress of toward 2030, which is also have been mentioned before, that breaking the silo on climate change, Sendai Framework, and SDGs. This is the essence of sustainable resilience. This is also already adopted by the ASEAN Leader Declaration on Sustainable Resilience on ASEAN Summit 2023. So I think we all agree with the ASEAN countries, including the Philippines, plus Timor-Leste. And then we also proposing with the Pacific Island Forum. We have been talking with the Deputy Secretary General for PIF. If this can be a global issue, then this will accelerate the 2030, not only how we can really relate it other sectors. And the other thing is about Indonesia is emerging the local knowledge with the national policy to strengthen the community resilience, especially inherent to the local issues, what we've been discussing this morning. So with this, I think people-centered is one of the issues that we are also talking in sustainable resilience, where people-centered approach is a strong partnership with the stakeholders will accelerate the progress of the Sendai Framework and also scaling up the 2030 strategies globally. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's concrete and well taken, I think. So, Major Kasuko, you get the last word, please.
Yeah, I like to answer or consolidated in the end, where the goal of enhancing the resilience of our state, along with multiple stakeholders, we will continue our leadership efforts as a city where the Sendai Framework was adopted. Toward 2030, we will further accelerate our efforts to foster a culture of disaster resilience in my city, in particular by doing following two things. First, strengthening a neighboring environment for the all of society engagement in the RR in Sendai City via our various initiatives, such as our regional multi-stakeholders gathering called Sendai Symposium for Disaster Risk Reduction and the Future, by involving more citizens and more actors to work together. And we have just commenced a development plan of the new memorial center. Open 2031, we will advance the plan and make this facility as a hub for creating a culture of disaster resilience in Sendai City. We are never-ending journey. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So with that, please thank all the panelists for their farewell messages to you in this conference, the summaries. You know what I really think we must take away, apart from many good practices, is the monitoring in the evaluation and the constant follow-up. The better integration and tearing down the barriers between different sectors, including in governments, maybe in private sector also, I don't know, in local governments, and really start working on the basics practices of how to live up to the inclusion agenda, broadly speaking. Now, 5 years to go, and probably you will get another 10-year plan, I suspect, after that. But I had a boss once who said to me, overcome resistance with persistence. I don't think we can achieve all these things. It's very often the expectation in global cooperation. But we must make progress, and we must measure our progress together. So with that, thank you very much, panelists, and let us break this session. Thank you. So please don't go, because there will be another immediate, very short 15-minute session. UNDRR, Mr. Marco Toscano Rivalta, will give out 2 awards. So I ask the panelists, you, you, my friend, to step down from the stage. And please, Kazuko, to stay with us here, because you will get an award here. Thank you, Sari. Excellent. Yes. So we will now, a short session to hand out the UNDRR award to a couple of resilient cities. They have been nominated as resilience hubs in Asia. And I would ask the special advisor, Mr. Huang, to join us on the stage as well. And as I do that, I will ask, where do you have this? Welcome. We met yesterday in another session. I listened to you. That was really excellent. So, please, you hand over the awards.
Yes. Do you want to speak?
No, it's you.
Okay.
So first of all, the award to to the Tsuji city, actually, through you, in recognition of your successes at building resilience at local level. And as I heard yesterday, not only did you make big investments, you also had a huge return on your investment.
That's correct.
Through improved tourism.
Yes.
Do you want to say a couple of words about that?
Yeah, sure, if I may. Yeah. So, thank you very much. Thank you, Margarita. Thank you, Marco. Thank you, UNDR, and the distinguished guests. Today here, I'm standing here with great pride and gratitude on behalf of the 1.1 million people of for the city of Tsuji to accept this great recognition. And I think this honor not just serves as a testament of our achievements, but more importantly, I think it's a reflection of our commitment to resilience in the face of challenges. Tsuji has always been a city that embraces innovation and collaboration. And with this great honor, I think it also serves as a reminder for our continued responsibility to promote the MCR 2030 agenda and work with other cities in this region. And last not the least, I think as we gather here today for this great event, I want to just us all remember that resilience is not just about bouncing back. It's about moving forward together. So thank you for your support, and we're looking forward to make the Asia-Pacific region continue to be a shining star in building the resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next is the city of Sendai and Mayor Kazuko.
You
also get a chance to say a few? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. The city of Sendai is deeply honored to have been recognized as a resilient hub. We hope that our experience can contribute to disaster risk reduction efforts in cities around the world with the understanding that disaster reduction is a never-ending journey. We will continue to promote our disaster resilience and share our efforts with the rest of the world. Thank you very much. ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。
And with that, I think I will ask you to conclude the session for this morning. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Margareta. Well, after such an amazing session today, it was very vibrant with the great ideas coming up, and certainly after celebrating the leadership of your cities and your work, there is very little that I can say, but probably two things I want to say. One is that we are certainly committed to keep serving your work, your leadership, and the communities that you serve, not only in this room, but beyond. There are many other leaders that are doing such great work. And I would also highlight the incredible work, or grassroots work, actually, of women leaders, such as the one that you have seen yesterday, the finalists and the winners of the WIN-DRR work. And the second thing that I want to say is simply a big thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
The session is closed, and we've done it just on time, a little bit 2 minutes over time, but I think that's the world record so far. Thank you all for this morning.